Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Brighton podcast, brought to you by the Global Sports Podcasting Network. And today we are going to be looking back to our game at the weekend and talking about a few things we learned. I am joined by one of GSPN's finest. I know I've said this a lot about Joe, but Jaime, you're coming up there now.
Oh, right. So I feel no bit special. Thanks for that, Bless. What a terrible introduction to myself. That's an insult. Thanks.
And always we started the podcast so positively. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about who stood out. Now, the time's sort of passed since the game. We've calmed down a little bit. So we'll touch on about who stood out. We'll also talk a little bit about teams coming to the Amex and sitting back. Something that, I'd never imagined seeing, but it's great. And then the final part, we're going to preview the game midweek against Wolves, the EFL Cup, and we're at home. But Jaime, let's get straight into it. Our 0-0 draw at the weekend. For you, who stood out?
Yeah, with this, there is really only one answer, and it is Carlos Belieber. He was an absolute machine on Saturday against Ipswich. He ran the show in the middle of the park. He was powerful. He didn't give the ball away that often. He drove forward with the ball. He had good link-up play with Danny Welbeck. Defensively, he was strong, shrugging people off the ball. And I think we said this in yesterday's pod, but it's crazy to think he's 20 years old. He's only going to get better. A couple of stats. I think he completed the most dribbles. And that is a real shining light of something he can bring. A powerful dribbler that just drives through the middle of teams where no one can stop him, especially at his size.
Yeah, we love to see it. He reminds me a bit of like just the old school midfielders who can just do a bit of everything, and they can play as a holding midfielder or a box to box, and even do bits in attack. So he's looking like a real good player. We also saw some of the new boys coming on. Kadioglu, how do you think he got on?
Yeah, it wasn't the greatest game from Kadioglu. I thought when he came on, there was, I think, 2 or 3 loose touches. One of them led to an Omari Hutchinson chance at goal, where he ran down the other length of the pitch, and Kadioglu was basically chasing back, trying to amend his mistake. And to be fair, he did do a good job of actually getting back and stopping him from having a shot closer to goal. But yeah, it wasn't a great performance from Kadioglu when he came on, but I think that is just nerves. Like, it is the first game he came on. He only had 20 minutes to show kind of what he's made of, and those nerves can hit different, especially in a league where you've never played in. You're playing with players that you probably have had a couple of training sessions with at a tempo when your team needs a goal. I can imagine the pressure was a lot for him. So I'm not going to be too critical of him because I think there is such a good player there. And I mean, you could see it with some of the link-up play he had with Mitoma on the left-hand side. There were flashes there of what is to come. But yeah, overall as a performance, I don't think he did that great. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, no, I thought it's a difficult one to come into, as you've alluded to. I think Brighton are chasing the game, and I guess you don't want to be in the position where you're the guy who's made a mistake and the game's gone for the other side. But I mean, he got thrown into it. He did look like it was just a bit too fast for him. I think he was involved in, that massive counter attack as well with Liam Delap running on. I just remember Kadioglu just chasing him, and he was nowhere near him. So I was like, oh, it might be a bit too fast for him. But I think with him, do you think it was bad enough to say that perhaps he needs to be eased in, or is it just a case of that was just a bad day at the office?
Yeah, I think bad day at the office. I think next game, if he started over Hinchelwood, I wouldn't be hating on that decision. I think because we know what he's proven at the highest of heights at the Euros. I mean, there is no more pressure than that. But I think it just needs time to get him warmed up to the team potentially, or just not throw him in a situation where we need a goal and we must get a goal, because that's when the pressure's most on. I think if he were to start a full game, I think it would be completely natural. It's like any fullback or any player. They would probably prefer to start a game than be thrown in with minutes to go.
Yeah, and again, you were saying he's nervous, but what if it's Anfield away? What if it's
Yeah.
Old Trafford?
Yeah, that wouldn't be ideal. I mean, if a good sign is that there wasn't anything too bad defensively. I mean, he literally had no defensive work to do, to be honest. It was just more him giving the ball away. Well, the defensive work he had to do was against Omari Hutchinson when he drove down the other end of the pitch, and he was at least there to kind of block or shot or make the shot difficult. But yeah, I would like to see him potentially, if he was thrown in a situation against at Anfield or against a better team, maybe see what he's like defensively. But he literally had nothing to do.
I hope we haven't been too harsh on Kadioglu today.
He'll be all right.
He'll be all right. Right, we're going to take a short break and you're going to hear from our partners at Zencastr. And when we get back, we're going to be talking about low blocks, tactical things. See you on the break. Do you have a story to tell that the world needs to hear? Have you struggled with reaching new audiences who engage with your story? It might be time for you to start a podcast. Let me tell you about a platform we use here at Global Sports Podcast Network. Zencastr makes it easier to start a high-quality podcast built for growth from day one, with 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically moves ums, ahs, you knows, and 22 other speech patterns. Zencastr makes it super easy to start a podcast that sounds great. Ready to tell your story? Check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. Hello and welcome back. We're now going to be discussing the tactics, the tic-tacs, all things football boards, magnets, drawings, patterns of play. And we've got the specialist Jaime with us. It's funny to see because, I mean, a lot of people probably just see Brighton as a mid-table teams. So it's funny to see teams coming to the Amex now and just sort of sitting back and giving Brighton respect.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about. I asked the Ipswich podcast when we did the crossover with them last week, and he was saying like, yeah, when you come to teams like Brighton, I can imagine us sitting back and defending. I know such a good attacking team; they're going to keep all the ball and things like that. And you're thinking how far Brighton have come since they first entered the league to where they are now, where teams come to us and their kind of only option of potentially getting a win is by sitting deep and then attacking us on the counter against potentially a Lewis Dunk, beating him for pace. No offense, Lewis Dunk. Still love you long time. But yeah, I mean, it is such a compliment, isn't it, to see teams come to the Amex and defend, or even the great teams like Arsenal when they had 10 men. You'd like to think they would potentially think they can win, but they thought, now let's take a draw here because this is a tough place to come. This is a tough place to get a point. And now the problem does come with how do we beat that low block?
Yeah, and that is a question. And do you know what? I love that you still putting in sneaky disses to Arsenal. It's been, 3 weeks? And it was a draw as well.
Yeah, I'm just trying to live in their head rent free.
Yeah, they definitely don't like it. The question is, though, I think, like we said yesterday, in yesterday's podcast, we were talking about how we thrive when it's sort of like an end-to-end game, and it looks like we're struggling to break down these low blocks. Would it be fair to say we're a bit one-dimensional?
At the moment, or from what we saw about on Saturday's game, I would say it did look like we didn't really have a solution of how to break down their low block. I thought there were... we went at it from a couple of angles. Matoma and Minter were getting the ball out to them, and then they were trying to beat their defender. Minter was putting in crosses, but Mitoma was just not being able to get past Twanzebe. I think that is a good way of trying to break down a low block, is attack them wide, try and spread the pitch as far wide, keep Mitoma and Minter as wide as possible, and then potentially there will be pockets for Pedro, who was missing yesterday, or Ruta if they play together. Then those kind of players work well in those pockets and they can thread passes through. Or we've seen it so many times in the past where Pedro has shot from far out and it's an absolute worldie. Ruta's also capable of that. He didn't have any luck last game, but against Ipswich, but there were moments where he had snapshots, and if it wasn't for Ipswich putting their body on the line, that game could have ended much differently. He could have had 2 or 3. So that is a good way of trying to break down a low block, is get it wide and then just move it around and then put it to Pedro and Ruta in those pockets. Or if Minter and Mitoma can cut it back, then that's another option. But yeah, that's the way I think we could work later on. And I imagine Hertzler seemed very detail-oriented, so it'll probably be something he'll be working on in the training ground.
I do like Ruta, but I'd definitely love to see Enciso start in that kind of game. Because like you're saying, if our wingers are stretching their back four, there's like little spaces in between their fullback and centre backs that Enciso has just got that quality just to slide passes down there. Whereas Ruta, I think, is more like a dribbler, and he'll get in the box and create something from there and shoot from there. But I think we needed like just someone to sit just slightly off the edge of the box and just be playing those little balls into the channels or slipping little balls around the corner.
Yeah, and that really shows the embarrassment of riches that we kind of have in that position, is Enciso, who I think for many other clubs in this league would easily start. Buonanotte we've put out on loan and he's starting most games for Leicester. So Enciso, who I think is even better than him, and he does have that slim frame where he can kind of live in those pockets, a great first touch, a great close control, and he's got that bend to just shoot at goal. That's the finesse shot. He's got that on lock.
Would you suggest any personnel changes in terms of if we do face a low block again? What kind of personnel changes would you make?
Ooh. Yeah, I reckon. You could start. It depends who we've. If we're starting, I imagine the ultimate goal would be Matt O'Reilly and Matt Swiffer starting as the centre mids rather than Ayari and Belieber. But let's say if they're not in the equation, or if they still are injured, or if we come up against a low block against Nottingham Forest on the weekend, then if Belieber sits deep, I think Ayari had a great game, but I would like to see potentially Enciso instead of Ayari, because like you say, like the things that we've mentioned, he is that more attacking threat.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think he's the star to sort of bring in and could change our fortunes when we face a low block. Right, we are going to go for another short break, and this time you're going to hear about the Global Sports Podcast Network. Every club, every day. This podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football, and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network. Every club, every day. Hello, welcome back to the Daily Brighton podcast. We are going to look ahead to the EFL fixture this week on Wednesday. Brighton host Wolves at the Amex. Brighton haven't lost in 9 matches and they're unbeaten in their last 4 at home. Admits we were not happy with the point at the weekend, but we'll leave that alone now, Jaime. Going into this one, what are your expectations?
Well, I'm expecting a win, and I'm expecting a long cup run. That is, well, I don't know whether I'm expecting it. I'm hoping for a long cup run because I think there is a chance to get silverware this season, and I am not even joking when I say that. I think if we really try in these competitions, then I think we could. We've got the squad depth to rotate, still be competitive in the league, but then also go to these EFL Cup games and put on a show or even dominate them. I mean, if you compare our squad depth to Wolves, who were playing on Wednesday, then I mean, leaps and bounds apart. I mean, I think our squad depth going forward is so much better than theirs. Even defensively, we've got a couple people like Igor, Adam Webster that haven't really got a look in the Premier League. But for cup games, I mean, who better to bring on? And I don't think Wolves have anywhere near the same level of players.
Yeah, you talked about depth and also trying to go far in the competition, but do you not think rotation is going to harm our chances?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think we've got like a team 1A and team 1B. I mean, if you replace Pedro Ferruta as 1A, 1B, Minter for Adingra, that's 1A, 1B. And then if Gruder is how good Gruder is and how good he was in the Bundesliga, that's another great player to bring on. Enciso, who we've spoken highly of just in this pod, that's another player we can have. And then our actual centre mid partnership for these cup games, I imagine, would be Ayari and Belieber if it's not Whiffer and Matt O'Reilly are playing in the league. So, and they've shown that what they can do just against Ipswich just on Saturday. So that is some team we've got there. And what do you think? Do you think if we were to play, let's say our backups, that's with quote marks, let's say Belieber, Ayari, Gruder, Ruta, and Adingra, and then Evan Ferguson up top. Who's stopping that?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think I want to see people given the chance, but I don't want to see too much rotation. I think that Premier League players, most teams, the top 6 teams and the teams that play in Europe play one game a week, one game midweek, one game at the weekend. We can do that as well with our players, but I do want to see players given a chance. So maybe 1 or 2 changes, but I wouldn't go all out rotation like last season, like De Zerbi, who strikes me as a man who changes his furniture in his house like every week as well.
I mean, I've got a question for you then. What would you prefer to prioritize? Like a finals run in, let's say, the EFL Cup, or would you like Europa League football?
Oh, that is a tough one. You just want to see your team win something. I would prioritize a cup run, but I think with the cup run as well, there's so many factors you have to take in consideration. Like for example, if we go through and the next one's Man City away, it's like
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, are you going to really? I mean, obviously, you will go out and put your best team out, but like, it sort of ends the run really if you're a cynic like me.
See, this is where me and you differ because I would rather Europa League football, and
Oh,
that is just based on think about the highs of last season. Our highlight of last season, although we did get knocked out, but we were in Europe. I mean, that is a memory in itself.
I know,
And
but think about Wembley. Think about winning silverware. Like that's the whole point of football. You want to be winning the trophy at the end of it.
Yeah, winning silverware. Maybe if it was to be winning the EFL Cup, then I'd probably think, yeah, fair enough. I'd probably take that over Europa League. But just the final, like a finals run, then I'm probably picking Europa League football because I'm thinking I want those experiences again. Let's get me out to Italy, get me out to Germany, and let's play these teams.
I love how you've picked Italy and Germany when it's most likely to be Kazakhstan and Luxembourg.
Great away days of it.
So, for the game on Wednesday, who do you want to see start?
Well, I do think there will be like half rotation, half not. So I think the people that will still be in the squad will be Van Hecker. I don't think he'll be a miss. And I think like maybe Igor will come in for Lewis Dunk because Lewis Dunk, older guy, maybe needs his rest, especially if we're going to play him on the weekend. So I think Igor will probably come in there. And then I can probably see Adingra definitely coming in on the right. I can see Enciso starting as well, and Evan Ferguson probably up top.
Yeah, Evan Ferguson's one I'm very excited for and definitely want to see him back in that side. Honestly, I think he looked so sharp when he came on. Just that little snapshot he had. I know it was 5 minutes, but he's just such a good striker of the ball. And he's so young. It's unbelievable. So I definitely want to see him starting against Wolves. I think, obviously, my guy, that guy. Yeah, rest him for the weekend. Rest him for the weekend.
Another old guy. Another older guy. We need to rest our older men for the weekend.
They're actually not even that old, to be honest.
30. They're in their 30s. I mean, that's old for us.
What about from Wolves? What players should we be watching out for?
Yeah, well, this will depend on who they play, but if they play a decent strength squad or their full strength squad, then Lamina against Newcastle, I watched that on Sunday and he was class, to be fair. Mateus Cunha, he is another absolute baller. We've kind of got, and I'm going to go, and then João Gomez, sent a CDM. He's actually a good old player. So yeah, those are the watch out ones. What do you reckon the score prediction will be?
I think we're at home, so I'm expecting a win. But Wolves are a strange club. They, sometimes they actually turn up and they look very good. So I'm gonna go for a 2-1 Brighton.
Yeah, I have. This is all reliant on who we play and how seriously he takes it. But I think even if we play the players I mentioned, if they come in, I'm gonna go. Yeah, I'm gonna go. Yeah, I'm gonna sit on the fence as well and just copy you. I'm gonna go 2-1 Brighton as well. I mean, Wolves haven't won so far this season in the league anyway. I think they beat Burnley as their last game. And this is also a revenge game for them knocking us out the FA Cup last season. So we need to be on top form and we need to get our revenge and then send them packing.
That's it. That's what we need to do. You mentioned something very interesting about Lamina, who, a player I think I like as well. I think he's quality. I feel like with him in that squad, it might be important to just play Belieber and not try and mess around with the midfield too much.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, we're very low on midfielders anyway, so we might just have to, unless Milner makes a return, unless he comes back from injury. But yeah, Belieber, just keep him there, keep Lamina tamed, and hopefully he can deliver a performance as good as he did against Ipswich, and then that would be class.
Yeah, so we need a Belieber outstanding performance. We definitely don't need any more injuries in midfield, although a few players are coming back soon. I think Matt Sweet is due for the end of the month now. Is it concerning, do you reckon, that he keeps just getting moved back?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, because it was only meant to be a little niggle, and everyone was like, "Oh, right, he's not playing. I wonder why." And it was just a little knock, and it's like 3 weeks we've been without him, and it's like, "All right, might be more than a little knock." But as soon as he comes back, hopefully he'll thread into the team again and deliver a performance as good as he did in his first game.
Yeah, and in his absence, Belieber, you're going to have to do the bits for us. Right, guys, and that is our time for today. Thank you so much for listening. I've been Blessed Shabamba. I've been joined by Jaime Guerra, and we have been the Daily Brighton podcast, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.